My dad kicked me out at 17 to make room for my golden sister's birthday party. Now they're begging me to pay off their $400,000 mortgage after my sister's third failed marriage left them broke. Hey lovely people! Subscribe to be part of this family and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. With that, let's continue the story. I was 17 when my father looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Pack your things. You need to be gone by Friday." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was asking me to take out the trash. I remember the exact way the kitchen light flickered above us, casting shadows across his face that made him look like a stranger. My hands were still wet from washing dishes, water dripping onto the linoleum floor my mother had just mopped that morning. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, my voice cracking. My heart was already racing because I knew. Somehow, I already knew this had something to do with Vanessa, my younger sister who could do no wrong in their eyes. "Your sister's 18th birthday is next week," Dad continued, adjusting his reading glasses like this was a business transaction. "We're converting your room into a gift lounge for the party. Your mother's already ordered custom furniture. The designers come Monday to start renovations." I felt my knees go weak. A gift lounge. For a birthday party. My childhood bedroom where I'd studied for every test, where I'd cried over my first heartbreak, where I'd dreamed about my future, gone. Erased for Vanessa's celebration. Where am I supposed to go? The question came out small, childlike. I hated how desperate I sounded. Dad shrugged, returning to his newspaper. "You'll figure it out. You're always telling us how mature and independent you are. Time to prove it." Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "Maybe your Aunt Carol will take you in. Or get a job. You've got 3 days." That's when I realized, they'd already decided. This wasn't a discussion. It was an eviction notice from my own parents. Let me paint you a picture of how we got here. Vanessa was born when I was 1, and from that moment the sun rose and set on her smile. She had these big bright eyes and perfect curls that Mom would spend hours styling every morning while I ate cereal alone at the kitchen table. Dad called her his princess, his little miracle. Me, I was just there. The practice child. The rough draft before they got it right. Growing up, the differences were everywhere. Vanessa got a brand new laptop for her 13th birthday while I'd been using Dad's old work computer that froze every 10 minutes. She got piano lessons, dance classes, and a personal tutor. I got library cards and told to figure it out yourself. It builds character. When she wanted to join the cheerleading squad, Dad bought her a $500 uniform without blinking. When I asked for $75 to join the science club, Mom said we needed to be more budget conscious. But I adapted. I got a part-time job at 15 working weekends at a local diner. I saved every penny, bought my own school supplies, paid for my own clothes. I told myself it made me stronger, more independent. I told myself their favoritism didn't hurt anymore. I was lying to myself. The real kicker? Vanessa wasn't even a good student. She barely maintained AC average, skipped classes regularly, and had been suspended twice for cheating. Meanwhile, I had a 3.9 GPA and had just been accepted into 3 universities with partial scholarships. Did Dad celebrate? Did Mom bake me a cake? No. Dad said, "Scholarships don't cover everything. How are you planning to pay the rest?" Like my achievements were just problems he didn't want to deal with. If you're watching this and have experienced family favoritism, drop a comment. You're not alone. That night, I lay in my bed, soon to be dismantled, for Vanessa's gift lounge, and made a plan. Crying wasn't going to help. Begging wasn't going to change their minds. I'd learned long ago that my parents' love came with conditions I could never meet. So I did what I'd always done. I handled it myself. First I called Aunt Carol. She was Dad's older sister, lived about 40 minutes away. We weren't particularly close, but she'd always been kind to me at family gatherings, often pulling me aside to ask how school was going while everyone else fawned over Vanessa. The phone rang 4 times before she answered. "Aunt Carol, it's me. I need to ask you something." My voice was steadier than I expected. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? It's almost 11. She sounded concerned, immediately alert. I explained everything. The eviction, the party, the 3-day deadline. There was a long silence on the other end. Then I heard her take a deep breath. Pack everything important to you. I'm coming to get you tomorrow afternoon. Don't you worry about a thing. Relief flooded through me, but it was mixed with something else. Shame. Embarrassment that my own parents were throwing me out while strangers and extended family showed me more care. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying every moment that had led here, every time I'd been pushed aside, every achievement that had been dismissed. Morning came too quickly. The next day Mom was out shopping for party supplies. Dad was at work. Only Vanessa was home, sprawled on the living room couch watching television when I started carrying boxes to the front porch. She glanced up, smiled sweetly and said, "Oh good, you're actually leaving. Mom was worried you'd make this difficult." I didn't attend Vanessa's 18th birthday party. Obviously. But I heard all about it. Aunt Carol heard about it. How half the neighborhood heard about it because my parents had hired a DJ and the music blasted until 2 in the morning. My phone buzzed constantly that night with messages from old school friends who'd been invited, sending me pictures and videos. Each notification felt like a knife twisting deeper. The party had cost over $15,000. $15,000. There was an ice sculpture, a professional photographer, a catering company serving expensive hors d'oeuvres, and yes, the gift lounge in what used to be my bedroom, decorated in rose gold and white with a literal chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Vanessa wore a custom designer dress that cost more than I'd earned in 6 months of waitressing. I watched the videos at Aunt Carol's house, sitting on her comfortable guest bed, my new home, and felt something inside me harden. Not into bitterness exactly, but into determination. I screenshotted everything. Saved every image. I wasn't sure why at the time, but some instinct told me I'd need evidence of this moment someday. "You okay, honey?" Aunt Carol stood in the doorway holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "I will be," I said, accepting the mug. And I meant it. Because right then I made myself a promise. I would build a life so successful, so fulfilling, so completely independent of them that they'd realize exactly what they'd thrown away. Not for revenge. For me. To prove to myself that I was worth more than they'd ever recognized. Aunt Carol sat beside me. "Your father called me today. Asked why I'd interfered in their parenting decisions." "What did you say?" She smiled grimly. "I told him that real parents don't throw their children away like garbage." Aunt Carol's house became my sanctuary. She gave me the guest room permanently, helped me transfer to a new high school for my senior year, and never once made me feel like a burden. She was a retired nurse, living comfortably on her pension, and she treated me like the daughter she'd never had. For the first time in my life I felt seen, valued, protected. I threw myself into school with everything I had. My new high school was smaller, more diverse, and the teachers actually noticed when students tried hard. My English teacher, Mrs. Dorsey, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who wore colorful scarves and had zero tolerance for excuses, pulled me aside after class one day. "You write like someone who has something to prove," she said. "Channel that energy. Apply for every scholarship, every grant, every opportunity. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't." So I did. I applied to 17 different scholarships. I rewrote my college essays 8 times. I worked 25 hours a week at the diner, saved every penny, and researched student loans and financial aid until my eyes burned. My guidance counselor, Mr. Henderson, a kind man with gray hair and endless patience, helped me navigate the FAFSA forms and application deadlines. Meanwhile, radio silence from my parents. No calls asking if I was okay. No text checking if I had enough money for food. Nothing. It was like I'd never existed. The only family member who reached out was my cousin Raymond, Aunt Carol's nephew from her late husband's side. He was 24, working in commercial real estate, and had his own story of family disappointment. We bonded over late-night talks about ambition and proving people wrong. Then 3 months after I'd left, my phone rang. Mom's number. My hand shook as I answered. "Hello. We need to talk about Thanksgiving," she said. "No greeting, no. How are you? Vanessa wants you there. For appearances." I should have said no immediately. Should have hung up and blocked the number. But there was still this pathetic part of me, that little girl who'd spent years trying to earn her parents' love, that wondered if maybe they'd realize their mistake. Maybe they'd apologize. Maybe this was the turning point where everything would change and we'd become the family I'd always wanted. Aunt Carol saw right through me. "Don't go," she said firmly, her hands on my shoulders, looking directly into my eyes. "They threw you away, sweetie. They don't get to summon you back when it's convenient for their image." But I went anyway. I told myself I was strong enough to handle it, mature enough to rise above. I was wrong. The moment I walked through that door, that house that had been my home for 17 years, I felt like a ghost. Everything was different. New furniture in the living room. New paint colors. Fresh family photos on the walls, and I wasn't in a single one. They'd literally erased me from the family narrative. Vanessa had taken over not just my room but my entire existence in that house. Dinner was awkward and tense. Dad barely looked at me. Mom kept making passive-aggressive comments. "It's nice of you to join us. We weren't sure if you'd be too busy with your new life." Vanessa, dressed in yet another expensive outfit, kept checking her phone and giggling, showing Mom pictures of her new boyfriend Tyler, a 23-year-old entrepreneur, who from what I could gather sold supplements online and drove a leased BMW. Then came the moment that should have been my final straw. We were having dessert when Dad cleared his throat. "So, about college. We've decided not to help you financially. We think you need to learn the value of hard work. Vanessa, however, will have her full tuition covered. She's decided on State University." The table went silent. I felt everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. My fork was halfway to my mouth, a piece of pumpkin pie I no longer wanted to eat. The words hung in the air like poison gas, choking me. I carefully set down my fork, the clink against the plate abnormally loud in the quiet room. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly, my voice remarkably calm despite the rage building in my chest. "You kicked me out to make room for Vanessa's birthday party. You've given her everything her entire life. Clothes, electronics, parties, opportunities. I've worked since I was 15, bought my own necessities, maintained excellent grades despite having zero support from either of you. And now you're telling me you'll pay for her college but not mine because I need to learn the value of hard work?" Mom shifted uncomfortably. "Don't be dramatic. We're teaching you independence." "Independence?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're teaching me that I don't matter. That I never mattered. That Vanessa is worth investing in, but I'm not worth a single dollar of support despite working twice as hard." Dad's face reddened. "Watch your tone. We've provided for you for 17 years. You provided the legal minimum required by law," I interrupted, something I'd never done before. "Food and shelter. Congratulations. That's literally what you're legally obligated to do as parents. But love, support, encouragement, quality, those were apparently optional, and you chose to give them all to Vanessa while I had to beg for scraps." Vanessa finally looked up from her phone, annoyed. "Oh my God, always so dramatic. Not everything is about you. Maybe if you weren't so bitter and difficult, they'd want to help you more." That's when something inside me snapped. Not violently but completely. Like a rope that had been fraying for years finally breaking clean through. I stood up, grabbed my coat and looked at each of them one final time. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I'm walking out that door and I'm never coming back. I'm going to college. I'm going to work my ass off, graduate with honors, build a successful career and create a beautiful life for myself. And when I do, when I'm thriving and happy and successful, don't you dare call me asking for anything. Not money, not time, not forgiveness. You made your choice. You chose Vanessa. So she gets to be your retirement plan. She gets to be the one you lean on. She gets to carry the weight of your expectations and your future needs. You wanted one daughter? Fine. You've got her." I started toward the door, but Mom's voice stopped me. "You're being incredibly selfish. Family supports each other." I turned back and I know she saw something different in my eyes. Something harder. "You're absolutely right, Mom. Family should support each other. Equally. Unconditionally. But you've never treated me like family. I was the help. The practice run. The inconvenient first child you had to tolerate until you got the daughter you actually wanted. So no, I'm not being selfish. I'm finally accepting the reality you've shown me my entire life. I'm not really your family. I'm just the person you happened to give birth to first. Dad stood up, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. If you walk out that door, that's it. Don't come crawling back when life gets hard. I won't, I promised. I've been handling life on my own since I was 15. The only difference now is I'm done pretending I have parents who care. I looked at Vanessa one last time. Good luck carrying all their expectations. You're going to need it. Then I left. Got in Aunt Carol's car. She'd waited outside, knowing I'd need an escape, and I didn't look back. That was the last Thanksgiving I spent with them. As it turned out, it was also the last time I spoke to any of them for 8 years. The next 8 years were the hardest and best of my life. I worked full-time while attending university, taking out minimal loans thanks to scholarships and grants. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, ate ramen more times than I could count, and studied until my eyes blurred. But I was free. Free from the constant comparisons, the casual cruelty, the soul-crushing feeling of never being enough. I found my people, other students who'd clawed their way up from nothing, who understood ambition born from pain. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration. Got hired immediately by a mid-sized marketing firm, worked insane hours, proved myself indispensable, and got promoted twice in 3 years. By 25, I was a senior marketing strategist. By 27, I'd been headhunted by a Fortune 500 company with a 6-figure salary. By 29, I'd bought my own house, a beautiful 3-bedroom Craftsman with a porch and a garden, and had a healthy 6-figure savings account. I'd also met Jonathan. He was a software engineer, kind and funny, with warm brown eyes and a laugh that made my whole day better. He came from a big, loving, chaotic family who'd welcomed me with open arms. His mother, Mrs. Williams, hugged me the first time we met and said, "Any woman who can put up with my son's terrible jokes is already family." I cried in the bathroom afterward because I'd forgotten what unconditional acceptance felt like. Aunt Carol lived long enough to see me graduate and get my first real job. She passed away peacefully when I was 26, leaving me a small inheritance and a note that said, "I always knew you'd fly. Love, your real mom." I kept that note in my wallet. Still do. Through it all, I never contacted my family. Never checked their social media. Never asked mutual acquaintances about them. I learned about Vanessa's life through Raymond, who still had connections to that side of the family. He'd meet me for coffee occasionally and fill me in, though I never asked. He just knew I needed to know what had become of the family that had discarded me. Marriage number 1 happened when Vanessa was 21. She dropped out of college after 2 semesters. Too much work, apparently, and married Derek, a personal trainer she'd been dating for 3 months. Mom and Dad threw another massive wedding, cost somewhere around $40,000. The marriage lasted 11 months. Derek left when he discovered Vanessa had racked up $30,000 in credit card debt buying designer clothes and funding girls' trips to Miami and Las Vegas. My parents paid off her debts. Marriage number 2 came 2 years later. This time it was Bradley, a guy who worked in his father's insurance business. He seemed stable, responsible. The wedding was smaller, only $25,000. They bought a house, while my parents co-signed and made the down payment. That marriage lasted 2 years before Bradley's parents discovered that Vanessa had been using company credit cards for personal expenses, tens of thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges. The divorce was messy, lawyers were involved, and my parents ended up paying $75,000 in restitution to avoid criminal charges against Vanessa. Marriage number 3 was Raymond, a different Raymond, a club promoter she met at a friend's bachelorette party. He was all flash and no substance, but Vanessa was 31 by then and Mom was desperate for her to settle down. Another wedding, another $20,000. This one lasted 3 years and produced 1 child, my nephew Miles, who I'd never met. The marriage ended when Raymond the promoter ran off with a 22-year-old bottle service girl, leaving Vanessa with a toddler and no job skills whatsoever. By then, my parents had remortgaged their house twice to cover Vanessa's disasters. They'd cashed in Dad's retirement accounts, sold Mom's jewelry, borrowed from friends, and now apparently they were drowning in debt with no way out. My phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my home office reviewing a campaign strategy for a major client when an unknown number appeared on my screen. Normally I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. Maybe intuition. Maybe fate. Maybe just bad timing. Hello. Is this? The voice was older, shakier than I remembered. Is this my daughter? My blood ran cold. I'd recognize that voice anywhere, even after 8 years of silence. Dad. Oh, thank God. I wasn't sure you'd answer. Your mother and I, we need to talk to you. It's important. Urgent, actually. We were hoping you could come by the house this weekend. My mind raced. 8 years. 8 years of nothing and now urgent? What's this about? He cleared his throat and I could hear the discomfort in the pause. It's complicated. Family matters. We'd rather discuss it in person. Please, it's important. Every instinct screamed at me to hang up. To block the number. To protect the peace I'd built so carefully. But curiosity, that terrible human weakness, got the better of me. Fine. Saturday at 2. I'm giving you 1 hour. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll see you then. He hung up before I could change my mind. I sat there, staring at my phone. Jonathan walked in from the kitchen, saw my face and immediately asked, "What's wrong?" "My father just called," I said slowly. "First time in 8 years. Says it's urgent." Jonathan sat beside me, taking my hand. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No," I decided. "I need to do this alone. But thank you." That Saturday I drove to my childhood home for the first time in 8 years, my heart pounding the entire way. The house looked worse than I remembered. The paint was peeling. The lawn was overgrown. The driveway had cracks, spider webbing across the concrete. This wasn't the immaculate house they'd once maintained so proudly. Something had gone very, very wrong. Mom answered the door. She'd aged dramatically, more gray hair, deeper wrinkles, a tiredness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. The inside of the house was even worse. Furniture was worn and outdated. The walls needed fresh paint. It felt like stepping into a time capsule of decline. Dad sat in the living room looking smaller somehow. Vanessa was there too, on the couch, a toddler. Miles, I assumed, playing with blocks beside her. She'd gained weight, looked exhausted, wore no makeup. The golden child had tarnished. "Please sit," Dad said, gesturing to a chair. I remained standing. "You have an hour. Start talking." Dad and Mom exchanged glances. Then Dad began, "We know it's been a long time. We know we haven't been perfect parents to you." "Perfect?" I interrupted. "You kicked me out at 17 for a birthday party." "We've made mistakes," Mom interjected quickly. "But family is family. And right now our family is in crisis. We need your help." The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. I crossed my arms. "What kind of help?" Dad took a deep breath. "We're about to lose the house. We're $400,000 in debt. Between the mortgage, credit cards, personal loans, we're drowning. The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings. We have 90 days to come up with the full amount or we're on the street." The room spun slightly. $400,000. That was nearly my entire net worth. I looked at Vanessa, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "Let me guess. Vanessa's disasters." "It's not her fault," Mom said defensively. "She's been through so much. 3 divorces, a child to raise alone. Not her fault." I repeated slowly. "She's 34 years old. Every decision she made you enabled. You paid for everything. You rescued her from every consequence. And now you're here asking me, the daughter you threw away, to bail you all out." Dad's face hardened slightly, showing glimpses of the man who'd ordered me to pack my things. "You're successful. You have money. We're family. This is what family does." I laughed. Actually laughed, long and hard, the sound echoing through that shabby living room. "Family? Now I'm family? After 8 years of absolute silence? After you funded Vanessa's entire life while I worked myself to exhaustion? After you paid for her college, her weddings, her mistakes, her debts? Everything, while telling me I needed to learn independence. And now that she's drained you completely dry, now that there's nothing left, suddenly I'm family again. We made sacrifices for you too, Mom protested weakly. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. The legal minimum, I cut her off. You did the bare minimum required by law, and you've held it over my head my entire life like I should be grateful you didn't commit child neglect. But Vanessa? He got love. Pain. Support. Money. Everything I worked for she was handed freely. So no, you didn't sacrifice for me. You tolerated me until I was old enough to discard. Vanessa finally spoke up, her voice small. I never asked for any of this. I didn't ask them to pay for everything. But you took it, I said, looking directly at her. Every single time. You took and took and took, and you never once said, no, Mom and Dad, save your money. I'll figure this out myself. Because you've never had to figure anything out yourself. You've had a safety net your entire life. I had concrete. And the one time I hit it, I learned to build my own ladder. You just kept falling, expecting them to catch you, never considering that maybe they couldn't afford to anymore. Dad stood up, trying to regain control. So you're just going to let us lose everything? Let your parents end up homeless? Let your sister and nephew have nowhere to go? Let me be very clear, I said, my voice like ice. I don't owe you anything. Not money, not help, not even this conversation. You made your choices. For 18 years you chose Vanessa over me. You chose appearances over fairness. You chose favoritism over love. And when those choices had consequences, you chose to call me, not because you loved me or missed me or regretted how you treated me, but because you need my money. ## Chapter 14. The door closes forever. I looked at each of them one final time. Dad, the man who'd called me his daughter but never made me feel like one. Mom, who'd watched every injustice and said nothing. Vanessa, who'd accepted every advantage and learned nothing. And little Miles, an innocent child who'd grow up learning the same toxic patterns unless something changed. Here's what I'll do, I said. Nothing. I'm going to do absolutely nothing. I'm going to walk out that door, go home to my life. The life I built alone without any of you, and I'm going to be happy. You'll figure out your situation the same way I figured out mine at 17. On your own. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. Please, Mom whispered, tears streaming down her face. We're sorry. We're so sorry for everything. Please don't abandon us. I'm not abandoning you, I said softly. You can't abandon people who were never really there for you in the first place. You abandoned me 8 years ago. You just didn't realize it would matter someday. I walked to the door, hand on the knob, when Vanessa's broken voice stopped me. I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. I turned back, saw genuine remorse in her eyes for the first time ever. You're right, I did. But sorry doesn't erase the past, Vanessa. And it doesn't obligate me to save your future. You have to do that yourself now. Good luck. The drive home was silent. Jonathan held me that night while I cried, not for them but for the family I'd always wanted and never had. For the little girl who'd tried so hard to be loved and realized she never would be. For the waste of it all. I never heard from them again. I heard through Raymond that they lost the house. Dad got a job as a warehouse supervisor. Mom worked retail. Vanessa moved into a small apartment and finally got a job as a receptionist. They downsized their lives dramatically, learned to live within their means, and apparently finally learned some hard lessons about consequences. As for me, I married Jonathan. We have 2 children now, a girl and a boy, and I make absolutely certain they know they're equally loved. My daughter gets the same opportunities as my son. No favorites. No golden children. Just 2 kids who'll never question whether they matter. Sometimes I think about that house, that family, those choices. And I'm grateful, not for the pain but for what it taught me about strength, about boundaries, about knowing my worth. They thought throwing me away would hurt me. Instead they freed me. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Your story matters and you're not alone. Remember, you teach people how to treat you, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from those who refuse to treat you with the respect you deserve. Stay strong, set your boundaries, and never forget your worth.